1 Thessalonians 5:24, faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. And to me, it's just, he's going to equip us every step of the way. Nothing is a surprise for him.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, where we take you to the front lines and behind the scenes of our work around the world. I'm your host, Kristy Graham, and this week we're taking you behind the scenes, and we're going to talk about a very special project. And it's something that Samaritan's Purse has never done before, and it's going to change lives in a war-torn region. It's an equine therapy center. If you're not aware, we have a country office in Israel. We responded just days after the October 7th attack, and we have been working in this region ever since. We're working with local partners to know exactly what the needs are, and so we've distributed thousands of food vouchers to families who were in need. We've served over 125,000 people. We've also worked with local partners to distribute hygiene kits and tents in Gaza, as well as supporting medical clinics in need. And now we're working on longer-term projects. We're building rehabilitation centers, and one of those is an equine therapy center. And I'm so excited to talk more about this today. I had the chance to sit down with Holly Silkman, who is the program manager of this center. And if her last name sounds familiar, it's because her husband, John Silkman, is our country coordinator. And we've had him on the podcast multiple times, and we'll link the interviews in the show notes. But what I love about Holly is that God uniquely prepared and equipped her for this role. Both John and Holly served in the United States military. And they retired after serving many years and serving and deploying many times. And after these years of sacrifice and instability, they were finally able to settle down. And they had everything they'd ever dreamed and wanted: a home, a ranch, a herd of horses, and land. They could finally put down roots. This is what they'd been dreaming of after getting out of the military. But the Lord intersected their lives, and he called them to lay it all down and leave it for a season. After October 7th, John was called to lead up our Israel response. And he called Holly about a month after he arrived, and this is what he said to her.
Holly, we have a unique opportunity that has been presented to me, and that is for me to stay here for a year. And so I just said, you've got to be crazy. I know. Our daughter needs you. I need you. The property needs you. And he said, well, here's the thing. They're willing to bring the two of you over. And so then I had to think again. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go. I love my life. And my first word was horse. That's my thing. And we have the most beautiful horses you can imagine. They are spotted saddle horses. They're smooth-gaited. So for anyone who is physically been traumatized, it's a nice, smooth ride. They're very, very smart. They understand English, like they can understand paragraphs. It's incredible. And I just didn't want to be away from them. So I was kind of kicking and screaming, and I brought up all kinds of excuses. And one of the best ones was, well, what am I going to be doing over there? Am I just going to be sitting at home waiting for you to get injured or hurt? Or, it's not exactly safe. I don't want to bring my 12-year-old to a war zone. Are you nuts? And I kept railing against God. And then finally, John called me and he said, you know how you've been taking these counseling courses, because I want to be a counselor and help the people in our community that are hurting. And unfortunately, it's a lot. And he said, and you know how you've been using our horses to help our friends and colleagues. He said, what would you think if you married those two things together? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I think that would be great at our place. We'll make that an equine therapy center. I love that idea. He goes, no, here in Israel. And my first thought was, I cannot believe that God is doing this, I had talked to my friend, Sarah, who is the best kind of friend you need, because she's very straight with me. And when I was telling her all of my excuses, she stopped me and she said, Holly, when are you going to get serious and follow what God is leading you to do? When are you going to get serious and step out on faith that he is calling you to do something? And I just remember looking at her going, but he's promised me, like, this has been the desire of my heart forever to do what I'm doing. And she said, no, you need, this is open doors after open doors. When are you going to get serious and figure this out? So I was remembering what my friend Sarah had said, and then John was just quiet on the line. And I finally just said, okay, we'll do it. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we'll do it.
Again, as I mentioned, Holly and John have lived all over the world, and they've deployed many times, and they finally were able to lay down some roots. But the Lord began working in her heart, and Holly was able to see all the positives that this move would bring. Yes, it was a war-torn region. It would be hard and difficult, but there are so many positives, and God had truly prepared them both to lead this team in this response. And also, it's amazing. She was able to see that her daughter would be able to live in Israel. They would be able to get to walk where Jesus walked and truly deepen their faith and their family.
And pretty soon, all of the negatives that I had, made up in my head, they just started to melt away. And so I just keep hearing all these people talking about how obedience to the Lord, don't delay it. You're never going to regret it. And I found in this old notebook, 1 Thessalonians 5:24, faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. And to me, it's just, he's going to equip us every step of the way. Nothing is a surprise for him. And so here we are, and I just am so excited now. I can hardly contain it. And I know it's the first one that Samaritan's Purse has done. And if I can do what God is calling me to do, and if the horses will respond the way any typical horse will, this will be such a success that you're going to want to see this in other areas, because it's life-changing for these people.
I just think it's so God to have put, for John to have already been asked for this assignment. It's not like they, I think, looked at your resume and what you could offer. And I just love the way that God does that. He takes something that no one could have ever foreseen. And you're right, it is such a ministry. So tell me, what is it that you guys are going to oversee, and why is there a need for it?
Well, the need for therapy of all kinds, I think, is going to be, I hate to be too grandiose, but I do believe it will be multi-generational. I think what's happening over there is absolutely horrific for both sides. So the location, I think, was very divinely appointed. It is right near the Gaza Strip. It's not where it is inaccessible to any people groups in the region. It's available to everyone, which, with Samaritan's Purse mission to we take care of everyone, I think that's so important and very poignant. I would ideally like to have the arena split so that we have time for the kids away from adults, and then we have time for the adults, because honestly, their reactions to equine therapy, it's a lot more intense than a child's reaction. And so I just want them to feel comfortable with these reactions that they're probably not going to foresee. When it happens with the horses, it's often fairly immediate, and it's surprising even to the person. It's one of those experiences that you cannot possibly imagine until you see it or experience it. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about the power of horses. I mean, I'm obviously a person who has been around them my whole life, but I did not understand how powerful they were until after I had been to a combat zone myself. And when I came back and spent the time with my horses, and I was talking to the breeder of these, she's like, I don't think you understand. They match their heartbeat to you. If you're anxious, they're anxious. If you're relaxed, they will be relaxed. But the magic part is that they can sense your feelings of emotion, and because they are a prey animal, they are extremely stoic. Obviously, they don't want to show pain because then they're a target. But they can feel what you're feeling, and they want to calm you down because they're like, it's going to be okay. They don't understand pronouns. If it's instead of you are feeling this way and I am feeling this way, it's we are feeling this way. So they want to make you feel better. And I've seen it where it was a woman, and she was really, really abused in her marriage. And she had this horse, and it was just holding him by the lead line. And he was just looking at her, and we thought, is anything going to happen? Well, pretty soon she started to cry, and this horse lay down like a dog on all fours, and he just had his head pressed against her kneecap. And this woman she just lost it. And the way the horse was just sort of comforting her with barely even touching her, but it was just such a magical moment. And I've seen young women who have been abused. They will they'll write on ribbon the names they've been called, or the experiences that they have had, or their pleas for help that nobody answered. They'll write it on these ribbons. They'll tie it into the horse's mane, sometimes the tail. We'll send the horse around the arena. The horse will run, and then the woman will stand in the middle, or girl. The horse will join her. I've never seen it where it hasn't happened. They will join her in the middle. And then one by one, she takes those things out, and we either throw them away. Most of the time we burn them. Sometimes we nail them to a cross. But it's such a cleansing experience, and it will bring you to tears then too. But of course, tears are very cleansing. But it's like the horses, they just get it. They know when people are hurting and they gravitate toward them. It's uncanny. So I just can't wait to see the magic happen. And I know that it will help the people of Israel and Gaza. So,
Wow. Yeah, this can be powerful. Holly talked about how the Equine Therapy Center will impact people physically, mentally, and spiritually. And she also tells us her prayer for this program.
My vision, Kristy, is all three of those ailments can be served. And I want to pick the people who are, so the wranglers, the people who are going to help, facilitate the horse and the client relationship. I want them to understand fully where I am coming from, that I am the hands and feet of Jesus. Jesus loves everyone, doesn't care where you're from, what your religion is. He loves you, and he loves the horses too. Otherwise, God would not have made them. And my hope is that they will just find a place of acceptance and compassion. We're going to start with compassion and move forward from there.
And you kind of shared it a little bit when you were talking about even just moving. And so I just want to come back to you personally. I think, when God calls us and asks us to do something, it is hard. I'm thinking of like when they crossed the Jordan and Joshua asked each of the tribes to, take a stone and make a memorial, to remember what God had done. And so I guess I just want to ask, what has God given you through his word, through his presence in a tangible way to move you into such a blind step of faith?
I was out with one of our horses. He's our herd leader. He's a big gelding. His name is Tribute. And I was out with Tribute, and I was just looking at him, and I just was kind of crying and saying, I was praying, and I was like, Lord, I am so sad that this is what you want me to do. Are you sure this is what you want me to do? And I came back to the question finally after this long prayer of, okay, God, here it is. Tell me what it is that you want me to do. And I felt this very small sentence. It wasn't, how many times do I have to tell you, Holly? It was nothing like that. It was just very quiet. And I felt like he was telling me, I already have told you. And that's when I realized, I'm looking at the answer. He might be not be the horse I'm working with when I'm over there, but I'm looking right at the answer. God has already told me and I just need to stop whining about it, and I just need to do it. But it was in that moment. It was a moment of prayer. Yeah, very, very clear answer from him. And there's only been a few times that has happened in my life. And the other time was when we adopted our daughter. And that's when, because I thought, I'm 42. I am too old to be a mom. Are you sure this is what we're supposed to do? And it was another moment of just, trust me. And so I heard it this time again, and it was unmistakable. And so that's what finally made me stop kicking and screaming.
And, and we never know, where God's going to, and that's why I love Samaritan's Purse. I love everyone that works here. And most people are open hands. God, what do you want me to do? I'll go wherever you go. And it takes a certain kind of surrender. And I actually just studying, when Jesus was walking the earth and, we're studying the disciples that he called, some of them, tax collectors and some of the professions, when they left what they did, there was no going back. It was like burning the ships. They were, fishermen, some of the others, they were saying they could have gone back, if Jesus wasn't who he was, but most of them, they believed in what he was calling them to do, and they were burning their ships, turning their backs, and that's how I felt when Edward and I left the military. There was no going back, when we left. But I almost think it's almost harder for you because it's like you could, this could be temporary, this could be forever. But I think just all God wants is our surrender and our yes, Lord. And so that's why I wanted to ask, because I think we need to hold on to that. God called me to this. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be all in for however long you keep me here, Lord. I love that we are dependent and relying on the Lord to redirect where we want to go. So I guess I'm bringing all this up to say, I know this, this might sound like some people listening thinking, what? Horse therapy, this is not something we've ever done. But I love that it's something that the Lord put on Franklin's heart and other staff members, and he has gone before us, as we can see. And you mentioned it, this is a generational pain and trauma, and it doesn't just go away. Tell me, I guess, why you're so excited to bring this to such a hurting part of the world.
Well, the first thing is something that you touched on about how, Samaritan's Purse goes in and helps so many different cultures. The first thing that I really want to do is make sure that I am voicing what I think ought to be done and then filtering that through the national employees that we will hire. This is such a dicey area anyway for different cultures and different opinions, and I want to make sure that we're riding that fence as well as we possibly can. As far as the privilege of this particular ministry in Samaritan's Purse, I would say that anytime you get to work with horses, it's a good day. And that's because they are so big and powerful. They let you climb on their back. They let you, touch them all over. They let you just be in their presence. And they are communal animals. They are animals that need the herd mentality. And so they want to be with you. And as a herding person, that is something so comforting, just to have this big, beautiful thing come and want to be with me. Why do you want to be with me? And many times these patients or clients are so broken and sad and just despairing that any kind of attention has been negative. But when you're with this beautiful animal and you get the attention from them, it's almost like an otherworldly experience. They'll change these lives. So I know it's going to work. I've seen it work over and over and over, and I just know it's going to here. My concern is I just don't want to be a hindrance in any way because of my own cultural norms and customs. So I'm going to lean very heavily on the team here to make sure that I am doing things the right way. And so, yeah, I'm excited because I know it's going to work, Kristy. I just know it's going to work. And it won't be me. It's going to be the horses. It's going to be the people that God ends up hiring because he's going to be in the details. And then it's that great concept that we have here at Samaritan's Purse, which is you have to give God room. Let him do it. And he's going to do it. I'm so excited to see it.
Holly's faith and the way that she trusts God with her whole heart is so inspiring to me. The Silkman family, they're truly an incredible example of trusting the Lord with everything. And when Holly and John made this decision for their family, they had to surrender everything, their hopes, their dreams, their future. And I love how God called them. I love that Holly is getting to pursue her dreams somewhere she never expected. This was not in their plan. They would never have predicted this, but God is going to use her gifts, her talents, and her abilities to impact countless lives through this program. And sometimes all that we can see is the uncertainty in front of us. It can be paralyzing, but I love the way that they said yes, and they're taking this step to follow the Lord. And I also love that Holly had a friend that was able to recognize this and see that she needed to be pushed and challenged. She might have said no on her own, but with God's urging and a friend, I love the way that she asked her, well, when are you going to go get serious and step into what God has called you to do? And so, again, we've talked about this before, the importance of godly fellowship and people that are challenging us in our faith and asking us those questions. And I just want to ask you today, what is God calling you to do? And is there something in your life that you need to take a leap of faith? Do you need to stop worrying about circumstances and your future and start wanting to seek the Lord and surrender everything to Him? As Holly was talking, I thought about Matthew 6. It talks about not worrying. Again, where's our approval? Are we seeking the approval of man and circumstances or seeking the approval of the Lord? And I love Matthew 6. It says, therefore, do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And so, again, we have so many wants and needs, but God sees them. He knows what we need. Sometimes we don't get what we want, but we get what we need, and the Lord is going to provide. And so John and Holly were able to lay down their ranch, their horses, and say yes to the Lord, not knowing what it'll be like when they come home. They know that He has called them here, and I love it. God talks about it in the Bible a lot. In 1 Samuel, He says, obedience is better than sacrifice. And He just wants our obedience. He wants our hearts. When He asks us to do something, He will provide a way out. And another story that came to my mind when I was talking with John and Holly about this call was Abraham. And in Abraham 22, God asks him to sacrifice his only son. And He tells him to take his son, your only son, who you love, to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering. And, now we can look in hindsight and see that God had a plan. He was not going to have him sacrifice. He just wanted his willingness and obedience. But Abraham didn't know that. Yet he rose early in the morning, took his son to Mount Moriah, and climbed the mountain, was willing to sacrifice, began tying him up. And that's when the Lord, He stopped him and He said, don't lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. Now I know you fear God. And since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. So Abraham lifted his eyes and looked up, and behind him there was a ram caught in the thicket. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered up the burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord will provide. And so the Lord just wanted his obedience. He wanted him to lay down what he loved most in life for God. And that's what we're called to do as believers. We're called to hold everything we have loosely. Our relationships, our things, our homes, our dreams, we lay them loosely and we say, God, they're yours. You've given them to us, but they're not ours. And when we lay them down, He normally does something bigger and better than we would ever ask or imagine. And in Abraham's situation, He didn't actually want him to lay that down. He just wanted his obedience. But sometimes we do have to lay things down and give them up for good. And John and Holly are laying down their horses, their home, and they don't know if they're going to come back. They think they will, but they don't know. They're willing to let it all go for the Lord. So please be praying for Holly and the team as they are choosing horses. They're hiring national staff right now for the Equine Therapy Center, and it's also being built as we're speaking right now. So be praying for this program and the ministry and the impact that it will have in this region. Pray for their family, that their faith would be deepened as they serve and live in Israel. Thank you for praying for our teams all over that region as they seek to bring the hope of the gospel in a really difficult time. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you were challenged as you heard Holly share their story of being called to Israel. Thank you for your prayers and have a great week.